Tonight on the Three-Quarter Show, we reach the Season 5 finale as Dusty tells us about possibly the worst train snow story yet. Yes, railroading in the winter, once again, it sucks. Now, to the studio.
What's up, guys? This is Heis. Welcome to the very last episode of Season 5. This has been, side note, I did this math like 2 months ago. It's fine. It was last year when I did this math that this has been the longest drought between seasons. We're going to try and not do this next time, but I have executive processing problems. Here we are. Woo!
But now you're medicated!
We're on drug number 2, and so far, so whatever.
I went off my meds, so
yeah. Sure.
Don't do that.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen.
Important note, kids, take your meds.
Go to the medical professionals and talk about your life.
Don't do school. Stay in drugs.
No, you stay in the drugs to stay in school.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Wrong kinds of drugs. He's thinking about the helpful drugs.
I'm thinking about the fun. Yeah,
we're talking about
not the fun drugs.
I shoot with this hand.
Anyways, today we're going to be playing Citation Needed, and this time Dusty's going to host. Woo! Dusty has written us a story that we must close out on, and you may have noticed that this kind of story was missing from this season. The trains get stuck in the snow, apparently. Something. He was worried about it being a snow story and the thing, and it's part of the format.
It's a tradition at this point.
We've done it.
Railroading in the winter.
Have we done it in every single season?
Just about. Yeah, because
we didn't do it with Jimmy.
No, we did.
We did. Didn't we?
That was the city of San Francisco.
That was with Goose.
That was with Goose.
Oh,
yeah.
Jimmy, we did the German and the drunken train wreck, which the German was cold. So
it was cold. There was snow. He had to stick his fingers in snow instead of in cider.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what this is, right?
for an Oster, once again. Anyway. So Dusty, wait, we haven't done the normal intro.
Question, did you actually think of anything this time?
Do I look like I've ever thought of anything in my entire life?
I don't know, you made this into a business model, so...
That's a great point. I don't know how it's happened. He's the most sober man at the table, it's Brett Weebold!
I don't know how to respond to that.
Honestly, in like the least drunken way you can.
Hi.
And that's how you know he's sober. He's acting drunk.
Yeah, you go.
Yes.
I'm acting.
Yes. He's the purveyor of inane bullshit that you can purchase at heistrains.com. Leighton Wand!
Help Mark buy a house.
This is the only time I will tell you to stare at this man's chest. This episode.
And back to the French Maid.
Back to the French Maid.
At least he will have pants on.
I am wearing pants this time. Honestly, hear me out. Here's our business model. You buy more heist birch. Mark makes more money. He buys a house. We start building the Montezuma.
We build train. We build train in the garage.
Once we have a hall of Montezuma.
A couple handfuls of oil. I'll shove them up my ass. We'll go into space. What are we doing?
Am I singing the right tune? That was right. Okay, good.
We're not taking the Montezuma overseas.
Oh.
No.
I mean, it would ship in a shipping container.
I wanted to pivot this into a Marines eating crayons joke.
Oh. Hi, Zim. How you doing? You're not a Marine, but you eat crayons. Twice. Once for the camera and once not. Because you're that broken. Anyway, Dusty, you have a story to tell us about the Colorado Midland.
I don't get a fancy introduction.
Oh!
It's Dusty!
Jimmy's friend Dusty.
How is that?
He's on your walls. He's on your tables. He's on your shelves. He's on your vases. You're everywhere.
I make class lamps.
I haven't done that yet. He makes really cool models of glass lamps that you can purchase.
Not models, replicas.
Replicas. That's the word. Talking is hard.
Do we want to start this episode over because we're 5 minutes in and haven't done anything?
No.
Okay.
I really wish I had a feather duster right now, so when we go in, here's Dusty. I can just be like,
this man makes excellent replicas of Handlin class lamps for the front of your locomotive. They're not cheap, but they're awesome, and it helps him out. So buy some.
Honestly, all things considered, the amount of effort goes into them.
They're worth
very
it.
awesome.
He's not making money on them.
No.
So, anyway.
Well, thank you all. So, we haven't really done anything Midland on the channel.
Like at all. Yeah, other than talking about the car the once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I mean Midland, I mean Colorado Midland. It's
Not Midland, Texas.
not Midland, Texas.
Not
Not
Nobody-
the British
nobody-
Midlands.
Nobody really cares about that.
not the sphincter of the,
No.
Paris, France,
sphincter of
and
the oil
Rome.
fields.
Yes.
For those that don't know, I grew up in Manitou Springs, and the Midland Railroad ran from Colorado City, which was Colorado Springs, through Manitou, up Ute Pass, and into the great unknown.
I've been to his parents' house. You cross the right of way, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, look, that's
That's where the-
suspiciously train-shaped and graded. Yeah.
So I figured I'd give a little backstory on the Midland before I get into my citation needed.
Because they dumb.
They dumb.
The coolest dumb. Yeah.
They're basically the standard gauge version of the RGS.
Accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1883, the railroad was put down on paper by a bunch of Colorado businessmen that wanted to get into the wealth of Leadville, Glenwood Springs, coal mines, silver mines, all that kind of stuff.
Back when silver was still a
Yes,
profitable
this was
endeavor.
before the
Right.
1893.
before the Sherman
Yes,
Silver Act.
yes.
Yep.
And this was even before basically a lot of the gold rush into Cripple Creek and everything.
Right.
And so that wasn't even a blip on their map. So 1883, they incorporated a railroad to build from Colorado City, which is outside. Hey, sir. Hi, sir.
Mr. Sir.
To build to Salida and Leadville from Colorado Springs, and they started gathering financial backers. 1885, 2 years after they're incorporated, James John Hagerman was named president. He had moved here for the air quality of Colorado Springs, health reasons. A lot of people moved here, Doc Holliday, all that kind of stuff, for the dry air and climate. So this guy, 2 years after the railroad's incorporated, is named president because he's got deep pockets. He's from back east.
He's not the president. He is El Presidente.
Yeah, Presidente. They still have not started building a railroad 2 years after they were incorporated at this point.
It's fine. Takes
That's
time.
fine.
Par
It's
for the
fine.
course.
It's fine. So, 1886 rolled
Insert
around.
California high-speed rail joke
Yeah,
here.
something like that, pretty much. This might be the modern version, or not the modern version.
The anti-modern version.
Anti-modern version of that.
No, because they
18
actually ran trains.
Well, this is true.
They were the best railroad until they were.
And then they got out of existence by the government.
That comes later. Hey,
yes.
we're jumping ahead here,
Okay.
1886, they decided Colorado Springs westward, you're going up 4% into Ute Pass. Why are we going to build this section first? Let's start up in Glenwood and everything up in the high country where it's flat and build our railroad there, get mining income coming in, and we'll subsidize our building costs that way. To do that, they have to ship in via the Union Pacific or the Denver and Rio Grande to get their rail and everything, locomotives there. Both of those are narrow gauge at the time.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah.
So
The Union Pacific we're referring to is the DSPMP,
Yeah.
CNS,
Right.
eventual
So
to be.
they talked about dismantling their locomotives,
She's made of mason, sir.
yeah, and shipping it in on the narrow gauge to Leadville, Glenwood area, and start building that section of their line first, so they could get something going that's not the 4% grade out of Colorado Springs. Yes.
That's like a reverse narrow gaugeism of
Well-
saying, like, you're the standard gauge railroad in a narrow gauge world. You
Yeah.
It's the other way around.
So they wanted to do
Farmington
this.
Bench.
They went to both the Union Pacific and the DNRG and said, hey,
And they finished doing a lot of cocaine on the table and went, "You want to do what?"
I'm the president!
we would like to ship our locomotives and cars to compete against your narrow gauge lines with standard gauge. And both railroads said, we're going to charge you double what everybody else pays for freight costs,
I'm disinclined to acquiesce to your request.
basically.
Means
So
no.
after the Midland was told this angered the investors that they currently had. Because they're like, well, wait, these guys, why aren't they helping us out? That's
And
a
you're-
heavy pour.
And your salary was cut by $2,000,
Yeah.
and hopefully you don't lose the company.
So-
Leighton Moreland
So
Railroad Taken 3.
they went back to all of their backers, which were Colorado Springs businessmen. John Hagerman, that was from back east. He had friends in England that got England financing. They said, hey, these other guys aren't playing nice. We need to show them what's what. They all delved into their pockets deeper and came up with $14 million
in
in
1886.
1886 funds
Lord.
and said, screw you, we're just going to build this railroad ourselves. So they started west out of Colorado City through Manitou and up the 4% grade into the mountains.
We'll just get more money and we'll build more locomotives
Pretty
and
much.
it'll be fun.
Infinite 280s.
By August of 1887,
It was 14 million.
yes,
We're doing a quick exchange
2, 3.
rate.
That
situation
is
here.
approximately
Holy balls.
that's approximately 470 million today.
It's a half
They
a
were-
billion
half a billion
they were
dollars.
dollars.
crazy. They decided to build a standard gauge railroad like a narrow gauge railroad into the heart of the Rockies.
Oh, so they did a VNT.
Yeah.
Yes,
they
except
decided to
more
build a-
and bigger.
Yes.
They decided to build it like a narrow gauge railroad. That is, badly.
Yes. By August of 87, they had built to Leadville. Then they got the bright idea to push over the Continental Divide westward towards Glenwood, Basalt, everything, and Grand Junction at 11,530 foot elevation over Hagerman Pass and Hagerman Tunnel with a maximum grade of 3.24% and 16-degree curves. Standard gauge.
That's tight.
That is not the elevation of mountain range they went over. That is the elevation the tracks were at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fun
The
fact,
highest.
the current highest mountain pass railroad in the United States is the Cumbres and Toltec
This was the
10,000
highest
feet.
in America
ever.
at the time.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, doesn't the Leadville Railroad go higher, but they don't actually go over
Well, they
the
don't
pass?
go over.
They don't.
Yeah.
But
They
anyway,
might go
so-
higher. Yeah. 10,020 feet.
That's
Cumbres
that's
and
the
Toltec. That's their-
backstory of
yeah.
the Midland, that they were just crazy and they just decided to do things their own way.
Lots of lines of cocaine.
Yes. So after a few years of deficits of $244,000 in 1888, and then earnings of only $4,912 in 1889,
Nailed it.
and $2,500 in 1890,
Nailed it.
James Hagerman said, you know what, we need to do something different. We need bigger backers. So he decided to sell it to the Santa Fe. Here's
Right.
where the Santa Fe comes in, which Mark has
Yeah,
talked about
yeah,
before.
Which is why the Midland car has
Has Santa Fe pedestals.
Pedestals. Yeah, that was previously.
So
yeah.
they ran it as a subsidiary, blah, 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 blah. Their over Hagerman Pass cost $70,000 per year to maintain over the High Line.
Like,
That was 10 miles of track.
God.
so at $7,000 per mile
mile.
Basically.
in the 1890s.
1890, yes. And so from 1888, there were already plans to try to dig a more straight alignment and lower tunnel bore to eliminate all of that mess. They, in 1889, they formed the Busk Tunnel Railway Company, and they were incorporated by June of 1890. Construction started in July of 1890 on a new lower tunnel to bypass the High Line, as they called it. Due to numerous encounters with pockets of decomposing granite and pockets of mud, it slowed work to a crawl through 1891, 1892, working summer and winter.
Oh, Jesus.
They worked round the clock. They worked in 3 shifts, basically.
Okay, once you get into tunneling and you're like
Yes.
500
that's
feet in the
true.
ground, winter doesn't
Winter
matter as
really
much.
doesn't matter.
It
a
was-
whole
It
lot.
just matters for the digging
Yes.
out to the tunnel portal.
Yeah, it just matters.
Yeah,
once
it
you
matters
leave the
getting
job site.
food and water
Yes.
to the job site at 11,000 feet.
This is below 11,000.
This is only like
This-
10
whopping
or something.
9,000
Yeah.
So
feet, yeah.
finally,
Still
October
higher
of
than
1893, after 38 months, they had bored a 1.78 mile tunnel
Jesus.
that was lower. It
Just
cost
using hand tools.
blasting hand tools,
Blasting
stuff
hand
like
tools.
that. They brought in a couple porters to bring stuff
Cardboard
out, muck and
derivatives.
everything. Cost over $1 million to build then in 1893 dollars, and it shaved 7 miles off the High Line.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it was
Probably the
basically
scary-
1,000 feet
It
lower.
was only
yeah.
575 feet lower at its maximum elevation of the tunnel than the High Line. But it saved in a whole bunch of curvature and everything like that,
right.
trestles.
If you ever see the track diagram, I mean, I'll try and pull
I
it
was
up
gonna
if
say,
I can.
pull up that shot of Hagerman Pass with all the trestles.
What a spaghetti piece of bullshit Railroads Online
Yes.
garbage.
So-
Yeah.
Mark, would this be a good moment to just take like a topographic map and just flop a spaghetti noodle on it?
It probably would be.
pretty much.
So that was again 1893.
I'll
find
They
the
finally have their lower, which is a separate company from the Midland.
Busk Ivanhoe
Busk
Tunnel, yeah.
Ivanhoe Tunnel
Yeah.
Company. And they left the High Line intact as a backup.
Just in case.
Just in case. That brings me to our citation needed of the night.
So the background has been finished. Hopefully you
Right.
understand how, I mean, the Midland, genuine batch.
Yes.
Genuine batch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that you had to get this backstory to make this make sense, I think.
Yeah, you have to understand the railroad, which we need
So-
to do a dedicated
Yes.
episode on.
So
And
Yeah.
just to
Yes.
establish some more context here, they never had anything bigger than a 280, right?
I don't
they had
think
some
so.
460s.
Well, yeah.
Like I
those
said,
are
they never
small.
had anything bigger than a 280.
I didn't even know
280s.
that they had 280s
The,
that
the,
early.
the Midland was
No, they
gone by
definitely did.
1917.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what you got to think
I think
of.
it's a question of whether or not they had piston valve or slide valve 280s.
I don't remember for
I
sure.
doubt they ever
slide.
had anything that had
Yeah.
piston valves.
Terminal might have.
Yeah,
but
the terminal
Yeah.
probably did.
Yeah.
Midland Terminal took over after
least based on the
If I had
Yes.
one railroad, yes, but what about second
Yes,
railroad?
so-
Anyway.
That's a different story. So this is called Tunnel Trouble and the Wild Winters.
Enough joy.
From, of course, Chapter 7. Why is it always
Why is it
7?
always seven?
Why is it always
This is from Morris Kafke, Colorado Midland book. Most of this is from, some of it's from Dan Abbott's Colorado Midland, Daylight Through the Divide. Both wonderful Midland books. There's not much online about the Midland, so
Right,
here why
yeah.
I've got it hand typed out because I read it in a book.
What are those?
Yeah. So I sometimes
you can
yes,
read?
I can read sometimes. So by September of 1897.
Okay.
So we're now 4 years after the tunnel was
Right,
built. the
we're
lower
past
tunnel.
Busk Ivanhoe. Yeah, because it was 1893. Yeah.
And we're past the Sherman Silver, everything like
Yep,
that.
that's 1893.
Panic has happened.
Panic has happened. The Santa Fe is bleeding money everywhere.
And so they axed the Midlands?
Not just the Midland, themselves everywhere. So finally they have a foreclosure sale in September of 1897 and sell the Colorado Midland.
Goes to the Rio Grande, doesn't it?
It was bought by...
Or was it the UP first?
No, weren't involved yet. That was Gould, and it comes later. It was basically bought by a Santa Fe employee and other backers that were original backers of the railroad. And the new
You mean a bunch of nerds decided to buy the railway and run it ourselves?
pretty much.
We'll buy the railway and run it on the main line.
They all start
But we
looking.
are the bosses.
They all start looking. The shareholders and everything start looking at cost-saving measures. At the time, the Busk Ivanhoe Tunnel, they charged 25 cents per passenger or ton of freight to transverse through the tunnel.
Adds up very quickly.
Yes. So
I got you $1.
they went to the tunnel company and said, let's negotiate here. Let's try to figure out what's going on here. And they used the High Line as their ace in their back pocket.
Right, like we have another option.
Right,
We,
we
can
don't
not
have
Or,
to use
or
the
their
tunnel.
joker in the back pocket.
Let's say, is that
Let's
really
put it
an
that
ace?
way. Yes. So
I feel like you're gonna need a lot of spades to shovel
Yeah.
out the snow.
Remember, an ace can either be one
and-
or yeah.
yeah, that's what they
sure.
went to the table with in September of 1897. What do you think happened next?
Tunnel company said, "All right, how about you just try that?"
Yep.
I was gonna, until they close the tunnel, yeah.
Point to Brett. They said, sure, go ahead, run your trains elsewhere. What are you going to do? The Midland said, hold my beer.
And that went, say it with me, everyone.
Poorly.
So Brett got the point.
Bye, Katie.
The tunnel company said, there's no way they're going to run over the High Line again.
And again, the line of cocaine.
Yes,
And
yes. So they started looking into reopening the High Line. That has been closed for, what was it, 4 years now at this point?
At 11,000.
At 11,000
11
feet.
yeah, half thousand feet.
It's fine.
What do you think they encountered as they started trying
Lots
to...
of ice.
Trees.
The tunnel at the top was completely iced shut. So point to Mark.
Start digging. Get your picks. Not like a
Popsicle.
They,
How many
they,
licks does it take to get to the center of the Hagerman tunnel?
One.
they took
Three.
Get your picks.
They took 3 round-the-clock crews, took 30 days of blasting and drilling to clear the
Ice.
tunnel
That's a lot of ice.
at the ice at the top of Hagerman Pass. At the end of that, it cost them $65,000 to rehabilitate and open the High Line.
That's a lot
As
of
opposed
25
to, I
cents
was gonna
beers.
say,
I think it had cost them like
70 grand a year to keep the railroad open. So now they're paying the fee for not having kept it open for 4 years.
Yes. And then I forget the total amount that they were spending per year. It was somewhere in the $70,000-$80,000 range to go through the lower tunnel.
Okay, right. So just imagine you're the section foreman who gets there, looks at the giant block of ice, looks at the rails,
so, funny story is that the section foreman kept relaying info. Oh, we've made it this far, this far, this far, this far. Management in Colorado City called him on it. They said, you've blasted through more ice than the tunnel is long. Either you're exaggerating your progress or what's going on.
Or the tunnel is getting longer.
Or the tunnel keeps icing up.
And Leon's getting larger.
funny side story, but that I didn't have that in here originally, but you brought it up. There it is.
It's funny.
So they finally get the tracks open, and this is, of course, 1897.
I just also want to imagine a section foreman looking at the tunnel and putting on ice skates and going, look, this is your railroad.
It's literally like, I'm picturing the giant block of ice from Futurama that they dump in the ocean, but it's Hagerman Pass tunnel shaped.
Yeah.
Yes.
So finally they get trains running the winter of 1887 97 into 98. What happens next?
Trains get stuck in
Trains
snow.
stop running.
McKinley gets shot.
Is that when that happens?
Of the idiots that know esoteric history here, he does have the most.
Yeah, I mean,
pedigree.
he was shot after 1897.
Points to no one. The tunnel company expect the Midland to come back, crawling back, but they did not. They ran the winter of 1897 and 98 and the summer over the High Line.
Meanwhile, Busk Ivanhoe is going totally
bleeding
broke.
money. Yeah, because they've got
they
nothing.
have $1 million investment in their tunnel.
Right.
And
No trains running through it.
And they have realized that this railroad has done enough collective cocaine.
God, they are crazy enough to call us. Nobody's crazy enough to.
So with lack of
the story of Colorado Railroading.
Yes. So with the lack of difficulties the previous winter, they expect to be able to keep trains rolling over the High Line. They didn't have any snows in the high country until November and December, and they were mild, and this is 1898. They were mild, and the Midland carried on over the High Line.
And then the snow hit them like a ton of bricks.
It was great until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't.
Yes.
So they kind of had like a reverse Franklin expedition there of like...
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not taking the Northwest Passage.
But they're going northwest through a passage.
Yes. West,
depending on timetable.
Yeah, Mark's right. Tuesday, January 24th, 1899, the snow began falling. By Friday of that same week, the lingering storm had dumped 8 inches in 5 hours, so the shop crews in Leadville began readying the rotary, and they left that evening heading towards Hagerman.
I can only imagine $70,000 to keep that chunk of the railroad open per year. How much of that budget was shovels?
Well, how much of that money was shovels?
He's got a point down the road here, so preemptive point.
We ran out of shovels!
How much of that money was shoveled?
Above the road,
How much of that money was shoveled into a firebox?
Preemptive points to all of you.
Oh boy.
So this is January 24th of 1899. By daybreak the next morning, this is Friday. So by Saturday morning, the rotary outfit had passed through Hagerman Tunnel. What do you think was awaiting them on the other side, ready to head eastbound into Leadville that time of year?
Another rotary.
No. What are you shipping in January that
Eastbound into Leadville?
Into Leadville.
Ice for the Ice Castle?
No.
Medicine.
This isn't Balto.
No.
I was thinking of snow and trains, okay?
This is what shocked me. A stock extra is waiting on the other side for the rotary to clear.
Because what does the Western Slope have in the middle of winter that Leadville doesn't? Food.
So a stock extra waiting on the rotary outfit to clear immediately headed through eastbound and down towards Leadville, powered by 3 locomotives. Dispatch left the helpers on that normally would have been turned at the summit to help them get through the snow.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
Yeah.
At this point, what happens?
One of the helpers derails.
They encounter lots of snow.
The helpers were not enough.
Half point.
Headlight plows were inadequate.
He's got part of it because it's a snow and arrived event. They
Run
made it
through
to
ice
the
and go in the dirt.
they
to
made
the
it to
ice.
the second snow shed above Busk, which is where the tunnel is.
Yeah, the
on
lower
one side.
tunnel is, yeah.
Lower tunnel, only to find that the snow shed had collapsed from heavy snow.
Oh,
That's not good.
They were trapped due to snow behind them, drifting in.
Right.
And
Because
the
you've got 3 locomotives and presumably a big wedge plow on the front.
If even that, I don't think they
So,
had that.
caboose on
so
the
they
back.
little
And a
engines
caboose.
big mend it and spun the locomotive with oil and bottle jacks, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the crew decided to hold up in the caboose in the cab and hunker down.
At least they got food.
Refrigeration, too.
I'd like to point out it's pivoting from livestock to food
To
during
dead
this
stock.
very quickly.
during this
That'll
conversation.
come up later.
Oh God, they go full Horatio Hornblower and kill a
You'll
bullet.
find out, yeah. So a passenger train that was waiting on the stock extra to arrive at
Westbound.
Busk
It's sitting here like
heading
timetable
westbound.
says they're supposed to have been here and dispatch. They were supposed to be here a long
Point to
time
you.
ago.
Point to you. They decide to cut off their locomotives and send the light engines westbound to try to find the stock
Let's see where they
extra.
died.
That was not a good choice.
So
Because now the
those,
passenger train's stuck.
those engine men,
Steam heated.
yes.
They probably have Baker
Yeah,
heaters.
they were
in the
mostly
past, so-
Baker.
Oh, okay,
back
that'd be
then.
fine. Yeah.
Those engine men discovered
while.
the first snow shed after Busk also collapsed.
Oh my god.
They were able to
We've had
return.
one, yes.
Yes, we've had first snow shed collapse. What about
Second snow shed.
They were able to return to Busk where they recoupled their engine to their train, only to realize they were snowed in and couldn't return east to Leadville.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Go hide in
Yep.
the tunnel?
Nobody
I
hid
think,
in the
I
tunnel.
think that's a Clive Cussler novel.
Nobody hid in the
I
tunnel.
think that's the sad story
Yeah.
of Henry.
So they
I think he deserved his punishment, don't you?
Don't you?
anyways, after that, after the passenger train stuck, what do you think happened next?
Well, the
What was
rotary's
in-
still up there. Does the rotary get stuck?
Yes. Point to breath.
Do they actually get stuck or do they run out of water?
They
or
get
something?
trapped on the west side by a slide behind them.
Are they gonna run out of water?
You'd be shocked.
Okay.
You'd have to shovel a lot of
Shovels.
snow.
Yeah.
Remember the story I was supposed
You
to
have-
prepare?
You have to shovel a lot of snow to make it turn into water
yeah.
to be usable in a.
Valid. Okay.
I will. This is not alluding to a future citation needed. You want to try and shovel snow into a hatch 10 feet above you in 50-mile-an-hour wind.
Yeah.
How's that going?
Yeah.
I feel like at
Valid.
that point you just open the hatch slightly angled and hope that
Yeah.
the blizzard just fills it.
The tender sled flies off.
At this point, the rotary stuck, the stock extra stuck.
So that
the
we have the
passenger
rotary at the very, very tippy top.
trains. They've gone through the
Okay,
tunnel.
so they're on the western side.
slope.
We have the stock extra
On the eastern side.
halfway down,
yes.
and then the passenger train
Trains.
slightly below
Yes.
them, pointed up, also stuck.
Yes.
Cool.
200 men at this point were hired to clear the Leadville yard as snow continued.
From where?
Leadville.
It doesn't say. It just
guess
says
Leadville
they,
A
was
lot
pretty
of day
big.
labor.
They stuck on the passenger
an
train.
additional 200 men were hired to get sent towards Hagerman to start shoveling.
Here's the budget for the shovels.
You and what army? This army.
Yeah, pretty much. What did the Midland do next?
Well,
The king of
presumably-
Gondor came out of the crevice, followed by a bunch of ghosts with shovels to dig out the whole f***ing railroad.
Presumably, they put together an extra move to take these 200 men to
400.
400
They're
men.
walking in.
Oh my god.
Hagerman from Leadville is
I feel like they're not
It's-
walking, they're shoveling.
that's
Yeah,
10,
yeah.
15. Well, that's not 10 miles, but that's
It's-
not
Yeah.
a short distance.
They decided to borrow a rotary from the Santa Fe.
Camera's dead.
There it goes.
Sorry.
He's dead, Jim.
Anyways,
Where does the Santa Fe have a rotary? In Leadville.
they borrow it from somewhere else and bring it in.
Oh, from like
This is like
from like
this is a
Pueblo or
multi-day
something.
affair.
Yes.
I see.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Oh boy.
Oh my.
So, the rotary from the Santa Fe arrives on February 2nd. Remember, this started on January 24th.
Christ.
All of this.
Yeah.
So we're 8 days in.
They arrived in Leadville and immediately headed west to the aid of the stranded passenger train at Busk. They reached them after 24 hours, and as the plow ran by the passenger train in the siding to clear the mainland of snow, the snow was directed, unfortunately, at the passenger train.
That's a
Shattered
bummer.
windows.
And now that camera's dead.
Good evening. We bring you another HYCE news bulletin. This just in from our research team. The K-37 locomotives were in fact built with green boiler jackets. We've got definitive proof, and guess what? It doesn't matter. Get over it. Get a life. There are better things to do in this world. Like buy our merchandise. Welcome to the Spring 2025 Heist merchandise launch. We've got boxcars, we've got t-shirts, we've got mugs, we've got stickers, we've got shot glasses, we've got...
Go back to what we were doing.
I told you to speak your mind, Jack, but Jesus.
We got him. We got him.
Here is your HYCE weather report. It's cold. How do you know that? Woman's intuition. Go to heisttrains.com. Link in description below. Free shipping for orders over $100. Now shipping internationally to foreigners.
Okay, we're back from the GoPros being dead. They spent a little time in Leighton's freezer, and we learned that I got a point for saying that the rotary broke windows.
Maybe we
yes.
should have sent them back to 1899 in the blizzard, and they would have cooled off. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's
So
weird
yes.
having cameras overheating while we're talking about
Mark
being
got a
so
point.
cold.
Mark got a point. Sorry, pizza in my mouth.
If I had a nickel for every time we've talked about that.
It's fine.
That as the Santa Fe Jewel passed the train and the siding on the main line, they broke out nearly every window on the passenger cars.
As you said, Brett, the Midland and windows of passenger cars of stationary trains and trains being next to them,
Not great.
Not great.
not a great history.
So after
Find a
this,
nickel for
I have 2 nickels. One of them horrifyingly more disgusting
Yes,
than the other.
yes.
But yes.
so that brings up, yeah, we'll have to do hoodoo engines at some point and stuff like that, because the Midland had one that was pretty
that
much
one.
hold my beer, watch this, and give everybody else a run for their money. So after that, the passenger train that was stuck finally was able to back to Arkansas Junction between,
no windows.
yeah, with no windows, between Busk and Leadville, and return to Leadville. February 3rd, the plow on the west side had been clearing snow west of the slide downhill towards Ivanhoe. Remember, a slide blocked them off to
Right.
returning back towards Leadville.
Right.
When reports came in of worsening snow and the crew exhausted, the plow in need of repair and low on fuel made the run for Basalt, which was the next junction point. Then they tied down for the day. All the work that was done was in vain, though, clearing to Basalt as it blew in behind them as they went. The Jewel continued uphill westbound from Buck with Midland Bridge and building crews to try to rebuild snow sheds as they went.
So at this point, the only train still stuck on the pass is the stock extra.
Yes, and
Got
the Jewel, Santa Fe Jewel plow is heading towards them.
Soon to be Colorado's first In-N-Out circa 1899.
Yes.
It's like the White Castles you get in the freezer.
This is
Yeah.
the White Castle in the freezer.
Yeah, so February 5th, the rotary outfit is repaired, refueled, freshly crewed, and left Basalt heading back east, powered by 5 locomotives.
Jesus.
They're going to ram this thing into the snow.
February 6th, this is another day later, east of Sellers, which is between Basalt and Ivanhoe, there is a miscommunication between engine crews on the rotary train.
Okay.
What do you think happened next?
Break a coupler.
Stall out?
Broken arm?
So,
Is it injured?
you're closest.
Okay.
Rotary was approaching a wall of snow and ice and
Break the rotary.
whistled stop.
Oh.
The rear crew misinterpreted the signal and continued shoving.
As push harder.
Yes. They derailed a locomotive and they broke the drawbar on the rotary. So now at this point, they had a rotary that could not be pushed nor pulled, and it was stranded.
They broke a drawbar in compression.
Ouch.
They also damaged the tender. Yeah, it was a big deal.
How do you break a rotary drawbar in compression?
Unstoppable object force thing. Stuff.
I'm imagining it comes up through the gangway plate, all of that, and both of the firemen go, ah! And make like the goofy, yeah!
The stranded rotary, the crews decide to hunker in.
I was going to say
Gee,
the
smart move. I
the
wonder
firemen made Wilhelm screams as they jumped off as they got thrown through.
What's the next step that the Midland decides to do as this.
Send more engines.
Another
Send
rotary.
Not more engines,
More rotaries.
more people with shovels.
more rotaries.
Okay.
They decide to borrow a rotary from the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific at this point.
So we've had one, we've had two, now we have three
Third rotary.
rotaries.
From the front, 2 of them from the front range.
Yeah.
This arrives in Leadville on February 6th. So the Santa
2
Fe
weeks
rotary
later.
was a Joule snowplow, which I forgot to bring up, which is an auger type.
That's
for
one
those.
of the weird, like,
Yeah.
The screw auger
sideways
type.
screwy
Insert
dudes.
picture here.
Yeah.
Yeah, insert picture. The Midland did a trial and they deemed that they didn't work as good as a traditional rotary.
They didn't last for a
Yeah,
reason.
so the Midland, once the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific is in Leadville, they decide to withdraw the Santa Fe Joule and replace it with the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Rotary on the eastern side and send the Joule around via DNRGW trackage to try and rescue the stranded rotary on the west side
So we
they're-
can't get up and over, so we're gonna go around.
via somebody else's trackage.
So we're going
Which,
to go
I
over
guess-
Tennessee past
Yeah.
Minturn all the way to Glenwood, then south from Glenwood along
To
the
Basalt.
Aspen Branch to
Right.
Basalt.
Yeah.
And at this point, it would have been that was standard gauge, so there's no.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Question for you.
yeah.
Did the Rock Island Rotary come with Rock Island crews? Because I'm just
I think
imagining
this
some
is-
guys from Nebraska going, what the?
I don't know. It
Why
doesn't
didn't
say.
you build a railroad over this?
So,
We're not in Kansas anymore.
No, you're not.
at this point, the Midland decided, let's run trains over Rio Grande trackage to try to keep some of our trains moving to Leadville and to Newcastle and all of that.
Makes sense.
February 9th rolls around, the Joule arrives in Basalt, and another blizzard trapped a passenger train between Buena Vista and Leadville.
Okay.
That's impressive because that's
That's
not
not
that
a huge-
snowy of an
yeah.
area.
No, same day, just above Busk, the borrowed CR and Pi Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Rotary broke a quarter-ton casting,
That's a large casting.
disabling that snowplow. Once again blew in behind them and trapping them as well.
Is the stock extra still up there?
Yes.
Okay, so it's
So
frozen.
the cows
It
are
is
dead.
It is
cows are dead at
The
this
cows are dead.
firmly a White Castle. Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that the Leslie brothers are just going, we're in the money.
Yeah.
Oh,
Telegraph was sent to Colorado City shops to start fabricating a new part for that stranded rotary.
You're going to say, start building
Building a
new
new
rotary.
how do you interpret that telegraph? You're the
I don't know why I
schmuck.
did this either. Start building new
You're the schmuck at Colorado City, and like you get this build this casting. What the f*** are you talking about?
I'm trying to figure out what they broke that is a quarter ton that you break in regular service.
Something big cast,
Yeah,
but
Did
presumably,
you break the cylinder? Like, what did you
presumably
do?
something that the big spinning
500
wheel of
pounds,
doom
yeah,
would have
500
Or the
run through.
gear, the big.
Oh, that's true. It could have been one of the gears.
Moving
those
on.
break a lot.
Yeah.
Moving on, February 10th, the hired snow shovelers that had been sent to Hagerman began
First
hiking
200?
the 200.
They've unionized and they want benefits.
Point to Mark. They began hiking back towards Leadville due to dwindling food supplies, and Leadville began to run out of coal, and they wanted more wages.
What do you mean dwindling food supplies? There's 3 Burger Kings frozen up on the there yet. Walmart Carter. Keep shoveling, assholes.
And the supplies in Leadville began to run out because stranded train between Buena Vista and they're not getting supplies in Leadville.
Gnome, send diphtheria.
Crews on the west side were shoveling snow into their tenders and burning wood from the nearby forest to keep their trapped locomotives going.
I'm just imagining a bunch of firemen going out with shovels and seeing the
Yeah.
trees and going,
Minecraft tree punching sound.
Can you imagine trying to cut down a
Food brought
tree
in
with
by
a coal
mules fed the starving crews, and the Joule made its way towards the stranded Midland Rotary, which is still up there, by the way, remember.
With a spaghettified drawbar. Yes.
Yes. On the
carrying
western
supplies
side.
to re-rail and fix the Midland Rotary. A
The quarter ton cast. Or no, that's the Joule.
That's
It's the Crip Rotary.
Yes.
Sake.
okay, can you imagine, like, rotaries when they go, they dig themselves a channel. So can you imagine you've spaghetted this drawbar, and now you have to replace this drawbar in a way that there is no way you can get
snow,
equipment
yes,
in there.
yes.
Send donkey with acetylene.
It gets better, trust me.
Oh my God.
This is just the start. February 13th, the first Midland passenger train and a week reached Leadville with the new casting for the broken down CR&IP rotary.
Okay.
The 500-pound casting was taken 8.2 miles to Busk via 8 men on skis towing a toboggan. The plow was once again at work by February 16th.
I'm imagining a dog sled team, but it's just a bunch of dudes.
I didn't see
Was
this.
that the most practical way to get it up there?
Apparently.
In a toboggan.
By February
To build a
16th,
really big slingshot in Leadville and throw it at them.
by February 16th, on the western side, the Jewel had finally reached the Midland plow.
Okay. So they're up and over to the west. Or no,
They were coming around.
They
to the ground.
circumnavigated
too
it.
many snow plows.
They
in this
pulled to
story.
Panama.
What I hear is there are 3 plows involved, 1 train of frozen beef.
It's pretty much.
And
None
passenger-
pizza, left beef. Sorry, this is none pizza, east beef.
Week 1 it was cows. Week 2 it was beef. Week 3 it is rotting beef.
By
No, it's
February,
not rotting, it's frozen.
yeah, it's in the high country. It's fine. By February 18th, plows, the Midland and the CNRP, were assaulting Hagerman from both sides, and by the 20th, we're within 7 miles of each other.
7 miles.
This is
on a
still not-
10-mile pass.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Hey, congrats! You've started.
What
You've
happened-
begun.
What I hear is that the Busk, Idaho tunnel
Start
people
digging.
are just eating their popcorn and just going,
Crypt Rotary is in the lead because it's stuck closest to the door.
Literally.
What happened next?
Something
they broke another one.
Another rotary.
Derail one of them.
No.
One of them blows up.
False
They reached a
spring.
union agreement
There
with
was
the 200.
another blizzard.
Rocketed Mr. President.
Opposite of false
Rocketed in and doing all the work of both outfits. Still haven't reached the stranded stock train, by the way.
What is the poor crew doing?
And the hired shovelers began to strike. This is where the strike came in.
This is where they
demanding
strike.
more pay and supplies were running low at Busk. New storm.
How's that 70,000 a year looking?
Yeah, that new storm ended 2 days later on February 23rd, and the Jewel had returned to the east side,
4 weeks.
broke through to Busk, bringing much-needed supplies. The Jewel and borrowed CRIP were swapped so the CRIP plow could return to Leadville for adjustments. They're just hitting everything so hard they keep breaking stuff left and right.
That's kind of how
That's kinda
rotaries
how
do
rotaries
this.
rotary.
Spin it up to full yeet and then crash it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully
yeah,
it works.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
It's a
And
lathe.
then brittle iron casting
Yeah.
bevel gears go ding.
At least it's freezing cold.
Yeah. The Midland Rotary required
with iron.
the Midland
Made
Rotary,
iron, sir.
which has been rescued on the west side, at this point required repairs that the basalt crews could not handle on the western side, and it returned to Leadville by
Yeah,
the
the Rio
26th,
Okay, what year is this again?
1899.
1899. So if you're like in basalt, you probably don't even have a line shaft shop. So you're just like there with a wall-mounted manual drill press, a cold chisel, and a hammer, and being told fix.
What happened next because of this?
Because of what?
All rotaries are where now?
Well, they're all on the east side, so the west side snows over, the tunnel snows, ices over, something.
They finally, at this point, send the freshly adjusted Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific plow around basalt via the Rio Grande
Okay.
to the other side.
So it's in basalt now.
It's in basalt now.
Okay.
Now we're into March 2nd. Remember, this started on January 24th.
February's been written off as a loss.
Yes.
That's a little real
The
today.
Midland plow back in action, and the Jewel returned to Leadville. They retained it there as a spare because they did not like the Jewel plows. They preferred the
Yeah.
normal rotary.
I like the idea that they get back to Leadville all victorious. Like, yes, we finally got the other 2 plows. What did we go up there to do in the first place? Oh,
Yeah, what's still
Right.
stuck?
the stock train is still up there.
Still up there. At this point, they finally made it through the 2 down snow sheds and reached the stranded stock extra on March 2nd.
Thanks.
They got stuck on the 26th, I think it
I'm
was, of
guessing
January.
I'm guessing the crews.
The crews,
they've
they
hiked out at
they
this
hiked
point. They're
out finally
gone.
to
Yeah.
Busk to seek shelter
I
or
think
whatever.
I'd give it 3 days on
Yeah.
the frozen cow hell train
Yeah.
before
The
The
hiking.
crews have hiked
You're
out.
on your own, cows.
So they had, so the crews had long dropped the fire and drained the locomotives. and stumbled down to the safety of Busk. One point in all of this, and I forget where exactly it happened, and I don't have it in here, one of the guys that had been up there for so long decided, I'm done with this. I'm going to hike out. But he was worried of the snow over the top of rotaries, walking out towards Leadville, if there's a train coming along, that he's going to get squished. The operator at Busk wired ahead, and a person became an extra to walk out of this.
Did he put on class lamps and marker lamps?
Flags.
So this guy walked out from Busk to Leadville.
Extra
as an
Johnson.
extra. Yes.
One man.
That wasn't in here, but it was such a good part of the story.
He is the
I'm
only
gonna
man
add.
to have ever run
Yes.
a train.
Yes, pretty much.
Phrasing. So also, imagine being the telegraph operator at Busk. You're just there with your hat, with your little visor and your arm garters going,
Extra 1 east from Busk. Leadville operator confused. You have a locomotive at Busk?
No.
Code
Return.
B-
No,
oh,
don't
true.
ask.
Yeah.
locomotive code BOB.
So he safely walked out, and I forget when in this fiasco that happened.
Extra ball.
But there was a gentleman that was permitted as extra as an individual
To walk the
out.
track. I like that.
Presumably as a leading section of his own train.
Presumably.
So March 5th, crews began clearing out the snowed-in stock train, and the rotary outfit was able to get the train with its lifeless cargo at this point down to Busk.
yeah.
Poor cows.
Poor cats.
What happened next?
So they're down at Busk
They're at Busk.
with a train full of dead cows.
Another
It starts snowing
blizzard.
again. Yeah.
You've had third blizzard, or second blizzard.
we've
but
had
not
We've
third
got the count of
blizzard.
how many blizzards. March 6th, another blizzard, the worst yet.
Oh,
undid
great.
all of their hard work.
It gets worse.
Luckily, the rotary was able to retreat to Leadville and wait out the storm
With the stock extra.
with the stock extra.
The secret here says don't get stuck on the pass during the blizzard.
Yes.
Let the blizzard do all its bullshit and then clear it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Problem is, when that time period is like a month, you might lose some customers.
Yeah.
Right.
So
You think the farmer was real pleased?
Point ahead to Leighton kind of here in that with the time frame. March 8th, the rotary is back at work above Busk with the snow finally stopped, and the rotary crew was able to return to Leadville each evening to tie up and rest, and warmer weather was helping. Good progress.
Yes, it got above zero.
Yeah.
Oh.
Good progress was made over the next week and a half of crews clearing the line farther each day towards Hagerman Tunnel. What happened next?
Another blizzard. And they don't stop coming in, they don't stop coming in, they don't stop coming in, they don't stop coming in.
March 24th, another blizzard hits, disrupting snow clearing efforts.
Mr. President, we're running out of buildings.
The warmer weather and then this other blizzard, constant thaw-freeze cycles, had caused much of the snow to turn to ice 12 inches thick, all having to be picked out by hand.
And the 1,200 want higher wages again.
Yes.
Oh my god.
March 30th, the Midland Rotary is damaged its wheel and was replaced by the Jewel.
At what point does ice become a glacier?
I
feel like
it's
we passed
approximately
that point.
tunnel size.
Yeah.
So we're at March 30th now. This started on the 24th.
2 months later.
What happened next?
Another blizzard.
No.
Jewel gets stuck.
No.
The Midland Rotary breaks something else.
No. You would think all this. Finally,
Oh.
Thaw?
Well, you've heard this before.
finally,
It
April
goes wrong.
14th, the eastbound and westbound rotary crews finally met. The blockade was over after 78 days.
Oh my god, Christ.
And oh my god.
And this is the most direct route
So,
through the Rockies.
yes.
Yes.
This one.
If you're looking at a map in DC.
So
And, yeah.
that's the gist of the story. I wasn't paying attention.
Oh wow.
Wow,
SD card is full.
we've used an entire 10 hours
Sorry.
worth of footage on that camera.
So-
That's impressive.
This is the final part of the story. I don't know who was winning all that, but that's the story
I'll do
of
it
the
in the map,
78th
yeah.
blockade of the Midland.
Christ.
Hold my beer, watch this.
Good lord.
Yeah.
Trains had not run through the lower Busk Ivanhoe Tunnel since October of 1897. The company operating the tunnel did not see any revenue during that time due to the dispute with the Midland. After the 78-day blockade in May of 1899, the Midland approached the Busk Ivanhoe Tunnel Company, offering to buy outright the tunnel.
They buy the tunnel and it's full of ice and they have to chip out the tunnel!
A deal bought a popsicle, pretty much. A deal was made to sell the tunnel to the Midland, and a temporary lease until the sale was finalized was in place by May 26th of 1899, with trains once again traversing the lower Busk Ivanhoe Tunnel. The sale was finalized on October 26th, and the High Line was dismantled shortly thereafter.
We are never doing
this
that again.
That's basically this. Yeah. The snow battle had employed nearly 800 men, and it cost the Midland $73,000 in rental equipment cost alone.
Jesus.
Plus the other expenditures, not to mention the loss of revenue over those 78 days.
For the cows.
And the cow. Well, that's another cost.
78 days,
So it
78
sounds
cows.
not that indifferent from the $70,000 a month they were spending to keep the railroad open.
Yeah.
They just did it the hardest way possible.
Yes. And that is why the Midland
But they
was...
proved the point.
Yes.
Kind of.
78 days
It worked
later.
for 2.5 years.
It did.
Yeah.
And that is why the Midland is the Standard Gauge RGS. And that's just one of the small Midland stories
Of
that
many.
happened over, yeah.
Yeah.
Good lord.
So
That was absolutely spectacular, and you know that we couldn't have a season of the Three-Quarters Show without some awful kind of snow disaster. I think on average, we didn't have one in the one season. There was snow adjacent things, but trains all stuck in the snow.
It's a tradition at this
nobody died apparently because of this.
Other than all the cows.
Other than all the cows. There's no record like people. That
Oh, and the
ended
Wilhelm
up-
Scream Rotary Fireman.
Yeah.
Yes.
No one, like maybe developed pneumonia or something like that after.
Yeah.
But
Love
there's
that
no
go.
recorded deaths because
Tied
of
to
that
it.
78-day snow battle.
Goodness. Well, that one was quite fun. Well hosted by Dusty. Dusty, it's been an honor having you. Of course, one of our best friends here, having you on for this whole season. It's been very much fun. The entire bottle of whiskey is gone.
Yes.
And that's the end of the video.
And that's that. That's all she wrote. She's made a Mason bogey, sir.
She'll sing.
She will sing.
Bye.